All right, so let's talk about Enjin Coin. For months, this gaming token, ENJ, was just, well, it was in a slump, a deep one, basically bleeding out while everyone else was looking the other way. And then, completely out of the blue, it did something nobody saw coming. It just exploded.
And I mean exploded. On April 9th, 2026, in a single 24-hour period, the price shot up by more than 69%. Just think about that. A staggering move that caught the entire market off guard and had everybody scrambling, asking, wait, what just happened?
And that really brings us to the big question we're going to dig into here. Was this a real sustainable breakout? The start of a genuine recovery for Enjin? Or was this just a flash in the pan, a speculative fake-out that's going to crash right back down?
So, to really get what's going on, you gotta understand the backstory. For months, ENJ was just stuck in this absolutely brutal decline. Any little bit of a rally got sold off immediately. The trend was just down, down, down. Then, boom. With no big news, no major partnership, the price just erupted.
And this quote right here, this is the key. The answer isn't going to be in some press release. It's hidden deep in the market's plumbing, in the charts, in the trading data, and in how traders had positioned themselves. The pressure had been building under the surface for months, and it just finally snapped.
So how in the world did this happen? Well, we can actually break this whole explosive move down into a pretty clear three-step chain reaction. Let's walk through the mechanics of it. Okay, so here's the sequence. First, you had a classic chart pattern, what traders call a falling wedge, that broke to the upside. Second, that breakout acted like a starting gun, unleashing a massive spike in trading volume. And third, all that sudden buying pressure caught a ton of traders who were betting against Enjin totally off guard, forcing them into what's called a short squeeze, which just threw rocket fuel on the fire.
And the scale of this volume spike is just wild. We're not talking about a small bump here. Trading volumes surged over 2,700%. It went from a normal day of about $8 million to over $200 million, even peaking above $300 million. That's not just random market noise, folks. That is a fundamental shift.
And that short squeeze we mentioned? Yeah, think of it literally like pouring gasoline on a fire. As the price started to pop, all those traders who bet it would go down started losing a ton of money. To stop the bleeding, they had no choice but to buy ENJ back. And what does that do? It adds even more buying pressure, sending the price screaming higher even faster.
Okay, so a technical move, supercharged by speculation, gave us this incredible explosion. But a shock to the system like this forces everyone to look past the short-term chaos and ask a much bigger question. It brings us right to the core conflict, the real tug-of-war that's going to define Enjin's future. Let's start with the bull case. Why do the believers think this rally could actually be the real deal? Well, it all boils down to two things: fundamental adoption and real-world utility.
And this isn't just hype. There's some real data to back this up. Enjin is rolling out new gaming features, new cross-chain integrations. They're running this huge user engagement campaign. And the on-chain stats? Network growth just hit its highest level since August of last year. We're talking about a living, breathing ecosystem with over 4 million users that has already minted more than 1.2 times billion NFTs.
So the argument for the bulls is actually pretty straightforward, right? All that activity, the new games, the millions of users, all those NFTs being minted and traded, it creates genuine, sustainable demand for the ENJ token itself. And that's the kind of demand that can support a price for the long haul.
But, and you knew there was a but, let's talk about the other side of this tug-of-war, because there's a pretty significant headwind the bulls are fighting. The skeptics, the bears, they're all pointing at the token's economics.
And here is the issue in a nutshell. A whopping 95% of the total ENJ supply is already unlocked and out there in circulation. So unlike a lot of newer projects, most of the token unlocks are already in the rearview mirror. But it also means there is this massive pool of tokens that could be sold at literally any time, creating this constant potential for selling pressure.
And if that giant supply wasn't enough, you've also got this. The network has an annual inflation rate of almost 5%. New tokens are minted every year to reward people on the network, and that just adds a steady, relentless trickle of new supply onto the market.
So when you put those two things together, what do you get? You get this constant, heavy weight on the price. For NJ to actually go up and stay up, new buyers have to show up day in and day out, and they have to be strong enough to soak up all of that available supply. It's a constant uphill battle.
So there you have it.
That's the conflict, right? Real, exciting ecosystem growth pulling in one direction, and this heavy, constant token supply pulling in the other. So where does that leave us? Let's look at what traders are watching right now to see which side is winning this fight.
Okay, analysts have their charts out and they're laser focused on a few key levels. That 0.0252 price, that is now critical support. The bulls absolutely have to hold that line to keep this breakout going. Looking up, the first big test is at 0.0379, but the real wall is waiting at 0.0432. These are the battlegrounds where this war will be won or lost.
Ultimately, it really all boils down to this quote. Was this whole rally just driven by short-term speculators using borrowed money, or will the long-term believers, the gamers, the developers, the people actually buying and holding the token, will they step in and provide real support? The answer to that question is everything.
And that, right there, is the main takeaway. The entire story for Enjin Coin at this moment is this epic battle. It's the exciting potential of its growing gaming universe on one side versus the cold, hard reality of its massive, fully distributed supply on the other.
Which leaves us with the final, defining question. Has the Enjin ecosystem finally reached a tipping point? Can the real demand from millions of users and billions of NFTs finally get strong enough to overpower and absorb the constant selling pressure from its own supply? The answer to that is going to tell us whether this explosion was just a fleeting moment or the start of a whole new chapter.